Hey everyone, Yasin here, and today I'm going to be talking about iterative drawing because it seems like I did make two videos on the subject already, and they're about 50 plus minutes long each. But it seems like I'm still not, or I still run into people who have some misconceptions about what it is. And for those who haven't watched the videos, I would recommend it, but if you still don't want to, the idea is basically this. When you draw, instead of drawing one finished image, like a person, instead you do 20 on a page of a thing. Like, let's say you want to get better at drawing heads. Well, you'll draw 20 heads. Okay, so that's fine. Except the problem that I keep encountering is people seem to, not, like, they do it quickly and they think speed is a part of it. Like, okay, so rather than carefully drawing one head, I'm going to rush through 20 heads. Just draw 20 heads. Well, that's not exactly right, because you're actually supposed to be spending a lot of time on each one, especially the first one. You're supposed to take it really slow and try and make it correct. That's the big thing, is correct drawing. So correct, not quick. And so you make it as good as you can for the first one. And then the second drawing you do, you're going to refer to this and you're going to look at what you did right and try and replicate that. And then whatever you didn't get right, like let's say you're drawing a head and you tried putting the eyes way up here, right? Well, the general head shape's looking okay, so you can go ahead, try to replicate that general head shape. But then you can think, well, maybe the eye placement's wrong. Maybe I put it too high. What if I put it here? And then you could think, well, that's a bit too low. So the next drawing, well, the general head placement is still correct. So we're going to stick with that. And then let's just try the eyes halfway. And then, oh, hey, that looks fine. I mean, maybe this is what you intended. And then, hey, that's cool. Or this. But in this case, we got our eyes halfway. It's like, yeah, nice. But maybe you're still, you don't have ears. So it's like, okay, so for the fourth one, you're going to try it again. So the head shape, we're getting that right. And then we get the eyes halfway. Okay, now what about the ears? Well, let's do this. Then you might look at that and think, well, that's really big. So for the next one, again, you slow down, you go through the next process, and then you try and get everything accurate and give it smaller ears, maybe, get the eyes. And then you might think, hey, that looks better. Okay, and then do another one. And each time you're sort of experimenting in what you don't know, but you're solidifying what you do know or what is correct. And that's why speed is not helpful. So if you think about it this way, what you're really doing is in your brain. Now I'm just going to do a visual expression of what's going on. I'm not going to actually be showing you, how the brain works. But basically, to simplify it a lot, you have a starting point and an end point. And let's say the starting point is, or the end point is the end of a line that you want to draw, right? And then this is the starting point. Okay, so the way your brain works is kind of like this. Whatever you do repetitively, you get better at. So that doesn't mean necessarily in a good way. It just means it happens more and more. So let's say you want a line going from here and you want to take it all the way to here, okay? So that's the goal. we get a line starting from here and ending here. Okay, so the way it works in your brain is every time you make a line like this to this, it's going to leave like a path, a very faint path. So if you go fast, you might, miss the line. Just you're making attempts really quickly, okay? So we're just trying to hit that line, and we're going fast, and we keep trying to hit it, and we're not quite hitting it. But you'll notice what's happening is as I keep trying to attempt this line, there's some like darker lines that are appearing. So one goes from here, and it sort of goes here, and one goes down here. And you'll notice that neither of them are going towards the line, but the more you attempt, the stronger this becomes. So that's not good, because what you're actually strengthening is the mistakes. So if you're drawing fast and you're just trying to make as many attempts as you can often actually get worse in that you will be strengthening poor habits. So here's where iterative drawing is supposed to help. So rather than starting by making a mistake and just doing like that or something, you really take it slow and you try and get your line as correct as you can. Okay, so at least it took a while, but at least we got from here to here. Then the next time you're going to do the same thing, right? And okay, so we missed again. Well, we hit the target, but it's not getting as strong. So then after we do this like 20 times and we keep trying to strengthen that correct response, two things will happen. First, our muscle memory is going to kick in, and we're going to get faster at putting this line down. And the speed is just by virtue of practice. So now I'm actually going pretty fast, and I can hit that line like over and over again. I can hit that line. Also, the path is strengthened. So there's a big difference between this and this. And that comes from starting slow. And so this one is slow, and then you get fast. And this one is fast, and you still remain fast, but it's incorrect. So it's better to do this than this. So that's probably the biggest thing, the biggest component I feel people are missing, is that they think iterative drawing is all about drawing fast as quickly as you can, and then, okay, get 20 drawings down and move on. Or they'll do 20 different drawings, okay, rather than draw, one type of head and try and get the proportions all right, I'm going to draw like this, and then I'm going to do like a side view, and then one where he's looking up, and then it's like, oh, this is iterative drawing. Not really, because you're not strengthening, like the whole thing is about that. Do the same thing over and over again, and correct your mistakes and get rid of your errors through experimentation or through some other form of understanding. Maybe you're using a reference of like a book, and it says, well, draw a head like this, and then you're like, okay, so then you try and draw a head like that, and you can use that to correct your mistakes. But basically, this is it. Okay, so another issue that comes up a lot is, why does iterative drawing work and who's it for? Well, for me, I'm very analytical, meaning I can grasp concepts fairly easily. If you teach me, for instance, color theory, and you explain, you have a color wheel and you have warms and cools and things, I can grasp that. Like, okay, maybe this side is cool and this side is warm. But then if I'm actually painting and I have to think about what color do I put on this face and where, I tend to or at least I used to, really slow down and not know what do I put here, even though I think I get it. And the same is true with perspective. I thought like, okay, I understand the principles of perspective. You have a horizon and you have a vanishing point and you build a box. And I thought, I understand this, so I don't need to do this in terms of practice because I kind of get it. But the problem is when I was actually trying to do things using perspective, I was very slow and kind of confused, and I would make a lot of mistakes. And that's because theory is one thing, but you also need practice. So analytical people are really strong in this, and intuitive people tend to be stronger in the practice, but weaker in the theory. And you really need both. So what I saw is that I am good at this, but I really lack this. And I would talk to people who were good in practice, but weren't necessarily that good in theory. And they all explained, how much they were drawing. And I realized pretty soon, I see what the problem is. I understand something maybe pretty well, but I don't have the mileage. I don't have the experience. This isn't easy for me. And it's easy for them. Even if they get it a bit wrong, it's pretty easy for them to do things, to visualize perspective or hit proportions. And so if you're someone who, you try and draw a head or an eye or something, let's just do an eye, and you're really struggling with just getting the shape down. Let's do worse. Something like that. Okay. So you're struggling with getting the shape down, but you understand what the shape should be. Like you might understand, okay, so yeah, there's a lower lid and there's an upper lid, and I get all that. But when you actually get to the doing of it, it's very difficult. You can't quite hold it all in your head. And then you have a person who has a lot of mileage who might quickly, put in things, and, it might not be as correct, but it works, and they're able to put the lines where they want them to be. Well, that's because of mileage. So then it's like, okay, when I figured this out, I don't know how old I was, in my late 20s anyway. So here I am in my late 20s, and I don't have mileage, so no mileage, or not much mileage, because when I was young, I didn't draw that much. So, I would draw in class, I would draw when I was bored, but over the years, I didn't gain much mileage. Whereas the people who were successful, I would see that they would tell me they've been drawing their whole lives, they've been drawing all the time. So over that time, they got a ton of mileage, and then they got older, and then they're like, cool, because they have all the mileage. So I needed mileage fast, but I was old, oldish, so I couldn't rely on years and years. Like, if someone told me, well, it took me 15 years of just drawing all the time when I was a kid to get good, I didn't really think I had 15 years to catch up. And so what I decided was there must be a way of crunching the amount of time. And to go back to the example I did before with the line. Okay, you want a line from here to here, right? So you keep trying to strengthen that. Well, if you're a kid, you're drawing, let's say you're drawing Dragon Ball or something. So you're going to try and draw that. Okay, maybe that won't work. And then you want to draw a dinosaur. So, okay, you're going to, well, I guess you can start from the same spot. You're going to try and get here to this dinosaur. And you're going to try and draw that. And then over time, you're going to keep trying to draw things, and then maybe you'll draw Dragon Ball again, and then maybe another dinosaur, or whatever. I mean, it's not so much dependent on subject matter as it is on proportions. Like, you're getting an idea of the sense of things. Maybe you'll try and copy things. And so you're doing all these different things and getting strong in a bunch of different areas, but it takes a long time because there's a lot of different things. So I thought, well, what if you don't do a bunch of different things and just focus on one thing and just do that over and over again? Well, in a shorter time, you can get really strong in that thing. Okay, so then it matters what is that thing you're going to get good at. And I realized, well, if that thing is basic, like super fundamental, and you get really good at it, then everything else is going to be made easier. For instance, proportions. What are proportions? Proportions, if you talk about an artist and you mention proportions, they might think of something like, the proportions of the human body. And they might think, well, you have a head and that's one head down, and then you have like a 7-head figure or whatever it is, right? So this type of thing is proportions. Well, it's utilizing proportions, and certainly it is the proportions of the human body. But what I mean by proportions is actually much more simple. What it is this by this. Like, it's just width compared to height, mostly. Of course, like, this is a super simplified way, but I feel like it's most accurate. So if you have a rectangle, right, it's this compared to this. So how big is something? These are the proportions. And so proportions means, let's say I want to copy this rectangle. I'm not going to do this because that's wrong. That's a different proportion. I'm going to try to make sure the proportions are the same. Now, the thing is, I could do this and try my best to keep the proportion and the scale the same. So the scale is, how, if this is at 100% scale, this is a tiny bit bigger. So it might be 102% or something, I don't know. But basically, I'm not worried about scale, I'm just worried about proportion. And the thing is, if you take an angle from here to here, that angle is going to be the same no matter what the scale is, right? Like, okay, just for the sake of a demonstration. Let's shrink this, right? So now we have a smaller scale version of this, but the proportions are the same. The ratio of the width to the height, like the units, if this is, 5 centimeters or something, then this is not going to be 5 centimeters. But the ratio of this compared to this is going to be the same. So if this is, let's say 2 units, and then this is approximately 3 units, then you've got a 2 to 3 ratio of the width is 2, the height is 3, and this is 2 by 3, not 2 times 3. And that would be the same here, 2 by 3. So that's what proportions is. So I figured if I get really good at just this basic thing, being able to measure a thing here and then compare it to this, then that's going to help me in so many things. Pretty much anything I draw. So these are like the ultimate, or maybe the simplified, most basic fundamentals. So the super basic fundamentals are proportions, which are how big is something in one thing compared to another. And then you have placement. So let's say you have a page and you want to draw a copy of like an apple. and it's here. Okay, so let's say you get the proportions right, but you placed it in the wrong place. Well, your placement is wrong. So you also need placement. And this also helps in terms of knowing where to put a thing, like being able to make a, like, let's say, placement, never mind. Let's just say there's a squiggle here. Well, where on the page do I put it? But not just that, what angle does that go? That has a lot to do with placement as well. You know, this one is at an angle like this one's at an angle like that, therefore this is wrong. It needs to be at a different angle. So proportions and placement. So when I started doing iterative drawing, what I focused on was first heads and then just basic bodies in a very simple form. So I was doing like stick figure people, and I was trying to get the proportions right and the placement of things right. And so it's simple, but you look at it and you try and correct your mistakes and then try another one. And each time you're, building up that line, making sure it's correct. Every time you do something right and you strengthen that, you improve. Every time you do something wrong and you strengthen it, you kind of screw up. Although you might get faster. So, think about just basic things. And I started with this because I figured, well, if I get this right, everything else is just built on top of it. And it seems to have worked. So the reason for iterative drawing is to build up the mileage, if you're old, that you didn't get when you were young using a very efficient method. And if you're young, it's just a fast way of building up mileage. So it gets you to a point where you can draw things quickly. So you can draw quickly, you can draw accurately, and like this is what you should be able to do anyway. And you should be able to draw, the things in your head, like I guess your imagination gets stronger and your creativity. So then what? Well, iterative drawing is really, for me anyway, it's a way of getting mileage. But that's not all there is. So mileage is basically, being able to put lines down. And, I want to draw a circle. Well, I can draw a circle. Or I want to draw a square. Well, sure, I can draw a square. Or I want to draw a face. Well, I can draw that face because I have experience. However, there is another component, and that comes in after, which is knowledge, which is theory. So you need both of these, mileage and knowledge. So you need the practice to utilize a theory. So what I had in the beginning was a bunch of theory. I knew a lot of things, but I didn't have the mileage, I didn't have the muscle memory to be able to do it over and over again. I couldn't make the same, like if I wanted to draw a circle at this size, I wouldn't be able to just draw another one at this size. I'd probably have to try and draw one, and it might get, I could know that this is what the proportion is, but unless I made some kind of graph thing and I measured and I thought, okay, this is at that angle, so I've got to do this angle, and then let me put 4 marks here, and then split this, and then if I go from here to here, and then from here to here, and then from here to here, and then from here to here, I'll get something that looks like a circle. And you can see how slow that is. So that's theory helping you to construct a circle, whereas if you had a lot of mileage, you just draw the circle, right? Like you don't need all of this. You don't need to draw a figure and then think, okay, well, let me measure how many heads tall it is. You just draw the figure, because you've already got the measuring part done in your head. You've done this so many times that it's built in there. So you need theory and you need knowledge. And if you have a lot of, theory and practice. So if you have a lot of practice now, like if you've been doing iterative drawing a lot and you've been drawing the same things and you've gotten really good at it. In fact, you're super fast, but you're only fast at drawing like one guy who's like this, I don't know, let's just say he's this guy. Okay. So you can draw this guy and he's really fast. Fine. Now what? How do you draw other things? Well, you need knowledge now. So the thing is, iterative drawing makes up for a lack of practice. Drawing speeds up practice. And it gets you mileage in a fairly short time. So by that I mean a few months, you can, maybe a year, a couple of years, you'll get enough mileage, even if you don't draw, to make up for the fact that, or if you haven't been drawing a lot, to make up for the fact that someone else might have been drawing a ton. So it's just a fast way of improving. So there's that. But then you need theory, and you kind of need to understand that once you have enough mileage, you're okay for mileage. You don't need to worry about, well, how do I draw a circle? You don't need to keep doing this. So at some point, you actually should probably move on to more difficult things, like or more advanced things, like concepts, color, like theory, understanding anatomy, really practicing things. And you can use iterative drawing to help you in those things, but it's not as important. So for instance, right now, I'm not spending my time drawing 20 of the same thing over and over because I don't need to do that anymore. That was a thing that I did for a couple years, maybe a year and a bit, and I got my mileage, or at least enough mileage. You can always get more, but I got enough that, yeah, I can draw things and I don't have to measure them. And I think that's really the key thing, is to be able to draw and not have to be thinking. Like you want to draw an arm and you can just draw the arm instead of thinking, well, is this the same length as this? Well, if you've done enough, it will be. So then instead of thinking about these measurement things, these basic things, you're just thinking about, well, the deltoid goes here and yeah, the bicep would show, and then you probably have this muscle going around, get the elbow there. You can think about other things instead of just like this stuff. So there's that. Now, the other thing is that I've heard is people talk about, well, I've been doing iterative drawing, but I can't finish works. And I think that comes from just, okay, you practice sketching, you practice drawing all the time in a very sketchy, loose way. And then maybe you draw like a head, and yeah, that's cool. And then you'll draw like another one from a different angle maybe. But they're all kind of rough and loose. I think this comes into this is related to that thing about drawing quick instead of correct. Because really, when you draw correctly, you kind of do slow down and have to finish. So what I would recommend to people who have trouble with finishing and they've only started stuff is like, okay, you have your first sketch. Instead of moving on to the second one right away, really work on this one. Like, think about things like what is this nose actually like? It might require you to study, to use reference, to read books or something, or look at tutorials or whatever, I don't know. But really slow down and think about these things in terms of the details. What is this line really doing? If I put a line here, I have to ask myself, is that exactly it? Is it this? Like, you'll notice how thick this line is, right? Like, it's from here to here in thickness. Okay, so if you had a thin line like this, where does that go? Does it go here? Does it go here? Like if you were inking this, where would you put that line? Does it go right in the middle like that? And usually the answer is yes, it's usually right in the middle. But that's something to really nail down. Make it so it's not just a basic rough thing. It's not just this, I draw a quick sketch and it's super rough and messy and then I move on. And it might be bad proportions, it might not be perfect, but hey, let's just keep going. I mean, that takes you some places, and surely you can get better anyway just by doing stuff a lot, but it's not really as good for helping you learn how to finish things, how to make things presentable. And that comes from slowing down then, which is why none of the methods like iterative drawing, none of these things, give them two different eyes because I wasn't looking at this eye. None of them are about being fast. You get fast, and it's a fast way to improve. So I think I said iterative drawing is the fastest way to improve. And the reason that I stand by that is because it just functions the way the brain does. Like, the brain is just, you have like a neuron and another neuron. You want to build a connection between these two. Well, you fire like electrical impulses, and whatever route gets the most impulses is strengthened. So that's why you improve fast, because this is just how you learn. It's trial and error, and for each success you get better. If you think about, I don't know, playing piano or something, you try and play a bunch of notes. Well, you might hit some notes correctly and some you might get the wrong note. But the next time, okay, well, try again and try not to hit the wrong note, try to hit the right note. And each time you're just trying to do the right thing often, more often than the wrong thing, until there are no more wrong things. You're just doing the right thing over and over again. And then after a while of doing this, of strengthening this, what happens is you get this like bonus power-up thing. Like, you've done this so many times, you now get this special, I don't know how we're gonna do this, how we're gonna make it special. Okay, let's just try to make it special. You get this you get like master mode. Okay, so now we mastered this. Master. And once you've gotten that, that's when you don't have to think anymore. That's when it just sort of happens. You might have seen artists you really admire who do this, and you wonder, how do they do this? How do they know, for instance, how do they know where to put a thing? And, you know, oh, they didn't use any guidelines or something. And that's kind of a big thing when you're young, especially. You see someone draw, and maybe they start, they just start with the nose. And then there's this, okay, they started with the nose, and then they went straight into the mouth, but it's fine. You don't understand, like, how are they able to do this? Well, that's the whole mastery thing, is after you've done a thing enough times, you can start skipping steps, because the steps happen in your head. They don't necessarily happen, like, you don't have to think about it so much. It's there. And then you can see things, like, this is still pretty screwed up, but I mean, just for an example, you can see things in your head that you don't need to, what a big mouth. All right. Let's all pretend that didn't happen. But you can see things in your head. So you don't need to worry so much about all the little detail things. So yeah, that's what you what you need to do. So if you lack mileage, then use iterative drawing. Be careful and try to be correct. This is the most important thing if you're going to take away something, that get it right. It's super important that you get it right and that you practice the right thing over and over again, or you will just get better at bad habits. Okay, so if you lack mileage, you do this. If you lack knowledge, then you have to study. You need to, I don't know, whether it's from life or books, you need to gain knowledge. And then if you lack polish or finish, things aren't looking finished, you need to slow down and spend more time. Now, you might have seen people who do things that look finished, but let's say with a painting, but they're really quick about it. They're just like loose and they put stuff down and it still somehow becomes a finished piece. Well, that's fine. But remember that they probably did this slowly at first before they got fast at it. So you might say, well, okay, yeah, they just sort of painted a head and, you know, it was sort of out of nothing and it was really quick. It's like, yeah, but that's only because they've already gained a bunch of mileage. So you don't want to be skipping steps and then trying to compete in a way and think, well, you know, I should be able to draw like that. Or I think that's cool. And then you end up just, you know, drawing really loose and sloppy, but it doesn't turn into anything, right? Like you see the people you admire and it's like, oh, they did stuff like this and it turned into a face, but I'm doing it and it's just turning into blobs of nothing. And you want it to be something. Well, you know, it's just going to take time. You have to go through this process. So give yourself time and understand that, you know, these things take a lot to do. And with iterative drawing, the trade-off, there's always a price, right? There's always something good and something bad. So what's good about iterative drawing? Well, what's good about it is it works if you use it correctly. Definitely works, and you'll improve pretty fast. What's bad about it? Well, it's kind of boring because you have to draw, you know, like drawing 20 times over, drawing the same thing and trying to get it accurate. That can be pretty dull. So that's really its huge negative, is that it's not that fun to do. And that's just it. That's just the trade-off. It's like, well, do you need mileage? Do you need to get good? Do you lack mileage? Then maybe you should just understand this is going to suck for a while and then get through it. But again, it doesn't take forever, because really what you're mostly focused on is proportion and placement. You're trying to get a thing put in the right place. And if you focus on that exclusively or mostly, you will improve fast. But the other thing is that, let's say you've been drawing this for a while. You've been doing your iterative method and you're like, I just want to do a finished piece. When will I be able to do a finished piece? Just do a finished piece. Like, don't worry so much about absolutes. Anyone who teaches you, including me, there's like this correct way to learn, right? Like, let's just say there was like a correct way to learn. And it's going from point A to point B. So this is where you want to go. This is where you start, okay? And you'll see art teachers and they'll tell you you need to do this, and then you need to get to this point, and then you'll get here. So you go here, here, and here. And the reason they're telling you that is because they learned over time that's how they should have done it. But the reality is they probably didn't. They probably went like this to this, and then like that, then went here, and 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 then here, and then here, and then, finally they got to point B, and then they realized, oh, shoot, I didn't need to do all of this. What I should have done is just this. And then they tell you, this is how to do it. But you don't have to necessarily do it perfectly. Like if you want to go off on a tangent and you want to do this for a while, I think it's okay. So long as you understand that, there is a method that works, and if you follow it, you'll get to your destination. But it doesn't mean everyone did follow it. So even if you're doing something like this, you still could end up back here. So if you feel like, well, I want to do a comic or a finished painting, and I know I don't have enough experience, so I'm not going to do it. Just do it anyway. Just do it to get it out of your system in a way. And sometimes you just need a break. Like you've been doing iterative drawing stuff for a couple weeks in a row, and it's really like, this is tiring. I just want to do something else. Well, do something else. Don't worry about it. And then come back to iterative drawing after. I'm not saying quit. I'm just saying allow yourself detours, because pretty much everyone I know, they learned often the wrong way a lot and a little bit the right way. So if you go to like an atelier, a school that's very strict, it says you must do this first, then you get to do this, whatever this is, this, then you get to do this, and it really limits you. That can be the correct way in one sense, because you will, like you're following a very strict method and you will improve that way. But you can end up kind of stiff and sometimes creatively not so strong. But if you can tolerate it, that's fine. But most people that I know anyway, they didn't do everything the right way. So if you're not doing things the right way, if you're a bit too old, or you're not really good with theory, like there are always ways around this. So trust that too. So anyway, again, super long video. Sorry about taking up so much of your time, but I do hope this explains at least a bit more about what iterative drawing is and why it's important to do things correctly. You don't want to do it all, just, oh, this is a fast thing, so I got to do it quickly. No, not about that. Not about that at all. All right. So I hope this helped, and thanks for watching.